This man's wife left him, but not for the reasons he thought. Once there was a couple who just got married in Paris. They were very happy together, but the wife had one secret she didn't tell her husband yet. She had a birthmark on her face. She'd been wearing makeup to cover it, but she thought once she showed her husband, she would know whether he truly loved her. So after they got married, she took off her makeup and showed him. He was surprised, but he wasn't going to let that change anything. However, the next morning, his wife was gone. Her husband thought that she must have felt upset due to how surprised he looked when he saw her birthmark. Or maybe she had second thoughts. After months of getting no reply, he finally gave up on trying to look for her. He was heartbroken, but after a few years, he got a new job in a different city. He wanted a fresh start in life, but things didn't go as planned. He came across a strange-looking circus called the House of Oddities. This made him very curious, so he went in, but what he saw inside would shock him. Among the other circus acts, he saw a twisted woman rocking back and forth, looking terrified. He screamed as he recognized the birthmark on her face. This is why you should never study too much. Kenzie's mom was obsessed with her getting good grades, but she could have never expected the terrifying things that this would lead to. Eventually, Kenzie's mom bought her an old school desk so she could study even more at home, but this was a grave mistake. Soon, Kenzie started to feel a sharp pain in her back, but only when she sat on the desk. This got worse and worse until she just couldn't study anymore, but no one could expect the true reason behind why this was happening. Kenzie's mother started to worry, so they brought her to the doctors. Mysteriously, there was nothing wrong with her, but one day by accident, they found a secret none of them know. Something truly horrifying was happening behind the scenes, and nothing about Kenzie's mysterious back pain or the desk is what they think it is. Follow for part 2. This is why you should never study too much. Kenzie's mom was obsessed with her grades, so she bought her an old school desk so she could study more at home. But Kenzie soon felt a mysterious pain in her back that only be there when she sat in the desk. No one could find the reason why, until one day, after going to doctors and even psychics for help, Kenzie's mother became desperate. But she could have never imagined the true reason behind Kenzie's mysterious back pain, and the truth behind this desk was something much more terrifying. Kenzie's mom decided to take a photo of her in the desk to fix her posture, and this led to their horrifying discovery. When the photo was developed, she saw a shadowy figure hanging above Kenzie, trying to put her feet on Kenzie's shoulders. The next morning, her mom angrily returned the desk, and that's when she found out the figure in the photo was a girl who used to sit in this desk until the pressure of being perfect was just too much to handle, and she passed away in the classroom. If you've ever used face cream, don't do what she did. This is the horrifying story of a woman who never believed a jar of face cream could change her life forever. Oiwa was a beautiful Japanese woman married to a rich and powerful man. Their marriage seemed perfect to others until one horrifying day. This is where Ome comes in. She was jealous of Oiwa's beauty and in love with her husband, so Ome began an evil plan. She made a poisonous face cream that caused Oiwa's eyes to droop and her hair to fall out. She then gifted it to Oiwa, who began using it every day without a second thought, not even checking her own reflection. Now disgusted by her husband began an affair with Ome, but things only get worse from here. In ancient Japan, Oiwa's husband couldn't find a way to divorce her, so he ordered one of his friends to SA Oiwa so that she could be framed for being disloyal to him. But the friend couldn't go through with it, so out of mercy, he hands Oiwa a mirror and tells her the truth. Shocked by what the face cream did to her, she takes the sword and unalives herself. In her last breath, she curses her husband's name. Soon, her husband and Ome got married, but on their wedding night, the ghost of Oiwa appeared before them. No matter where they went, Oiwa would always follow them, staring at them with her ghostly eyes, haunting them forever. Are you brave enough to try this? Once there was a young woman named Natalie who went to visit a loved one at a cemetery. It was late at night, so she got tired and found a stone bench to sit on to take a break before heading home. But this turned out to be a terrifying mistake. Soon she heard the voice of a woman. It grew closer and closer until it turned into a scream, but no one was there. Natalie tried to leave, but she looked down and she saw a pair of hands grabbing her feet. She shook herself free and ran as fast as she could, not being sure what just happened. She got home and carried on with her life, trying to forget it. But soon, one night when she was alone, she heard that same voice again. What Natalie didn't know is that night in the cemetery, she had unknowingly sat in the devil's chair, an urban legend originating in Florida that every year on a special night, a chair would rise from the ground in a cemetery. This chair is rumored to be built by the devil himself, and he would even return to sometimes sit in it. And if you dare sit in his chair, you would have made a deal with the devil. He will whisper evil ideas into your ear and haunt you forever, or he will return for you when you least expect it. What would you do if this happened to you? Once a young woman named Claudia was about to walk home when it started raining heavily. Not wanting to be rained on, she decided she should get a taxi instead. As she walked down the empty streets past the cemetery, a taxi approached her. She got in and quickly realized something was wrong. She began feeling unusually cold and noticed the windows were covered in ice. Then things got even weirder. Claudia realized that they were going the wrong way. She blurted out to the driver, "We're going the wrong way," but got no response. She raised her hand to tap him on the shoulder and the driver looked back. Claudia let out a scream. She couldn't believe what she saw. The driver's face was withered and pale. His skin clinging tightly to his bones. Claudia began to panic. She tried to open the door and jump out, but nothing worked. She even banged on the windows to try to get passers-by's attention, but nobody heard her. Then, in a fit of desperation, Claudia began to scratch at the driver to make him stop driving. His withered face came off into her hand, revealing a gleaming white skull beneath. Claudia and that taxi was never seen again. Do your parents ever play games together? When Jasmine was younger, something strange happened. One night, her mother checked up on her while she was sleeping, but it wasn't the way that you usually think. She woke up in the middle of the night with a strange feeling that someone or something had been watching her. She looked up and saw that her mother was just standing there, smiling and staring at her with her eyes unnaturally wide open. Jasmine asked what she was doing up in the middle of the night, and her mother replied, "I'm watching you sleep." Jasmine knew something was wrong. They kept staring at each other and neither of them blinked. Jasmine somehow knew they were playing a game together, a game to see who would blink first. But what would happen if Jasmine blinked? She was terrified to find out. This figure in her bedroom was not her mother. It was in her eyes. It held something terrifying, something inhuman. Soon, this version of her mother began moving backwards, without blinking, turning around, or breaking eye contact. She just moved back until she reached Jasmine's closet, then opened the door and stepped inside, as if she'd been staying there this entire time. Jasmine kept staring at the closet, and without breaking eye contact, ran to her parents' room. There, she saw her mother on her bed, sleeping peacefully. This woman will never look at sticky notes the same way again. Once a young woman came home to find her house empty. She went to the kitchen to get a snack and found a sticky note left on the fridge. But as soon as she looked at it, she realized something was strange about it. It said there is someone in the house. Assuming it could be her brother, she said, "That's really funny, but the prank's over." No one answered. She walked towards the door, but it was locked. Then she turned around and on the table was another sticky note. It said, "You're not going anywhere." She began to feel scared. She opened the kitchen drawer to try to find something to defend herself, but the drawer was completely emptied. Inside was another sticky note. "You shouldn't play with sharp things." She ran upstairs to her bedroom and locked the door, and quickly called the police and begged them to come as soon as possible. Then, all of a sudden, the TV turned on by itself. It was loud and static, but on the screen was another note. "Now I have you where I want you." This time, the young woman began screaming. Soon, the police found her in a corner crying in fear. They searched the house and found no one there. But as soon as the young woman stood up and tried to leave, police found something horrifying. An officer took off a note stuck on the young woman's back and handed it to her. It said, "I was this close." If you ever hear someone whistling, don't do what she did. Once a girl moved to Peru with her dad, who started a new job as an English teacher. But one night something strange happened. She looked out the window and saw a long dark shadow moving through the trees. Then as the shadow approached her bedroom window, she heard a whistling sound. Not thinking much of it, she began whistling back to it. Her father came to check on her and found her daughter still facing the windows, whistling to something unknown. He asked, "What are you doing?" And she replied, "Whistling at the dark figure in the trees." And as soon as the father looked outside, he took his daughter and locked her in the closet. Then he broke the key in the lock and locked the windows. And from the inside of the closet, the girl could hear her father saying prayers, but all of a sudden it stopped. Then she heard a scream. The bedroom windows shattered and she heard her father's screams fade into the distance. The next morning, the girl was found by villagers investigating the damage to the house. Her father was never found, and eventually she was adopted by her aunt and uncle. Years later, she still sleeps inside a locked closet, in fear that the dark creature that once whistled to her would someday return for her. What if you can find out what your true soulmate looks like? Once a girl in Japan was scared that no one would want to marry her. She'd been single all her life and wanted to know what her soulmate looked like. So she played a mysterious fortune-telling game. But she could have never known the horrifying consequences this would lead to. To play this game, she filled a bucket with water. Then when the clock struck midnight, she leaned forwards with a razor in her mouth, and in the reflection she saw the face of a man. She was so surprised that she let out a scream. At the same time, the razor fell out of her mouth and into the water. Then instantly, the bucket of water turned red. But a few seconds later, it was clear again. And even though this was strange, the girl decided to ignore it. Years passed and she ended up dating a man. He was gentle, respectful, funny, and had a good job, but something was wrong with him. He would always wear a white mask, and anytime that she would ask him to take it off, he'd get angry, until one day he asked her to marry him. She was excited, though she wondered, how can I marry someone if I've never seen their whole face before? So she told him she'll only marry him if he takes off the mask. So he did, and what she saw would terrify her forever. Underneath his mask was a huge scar that went from ear to ear. She stared in disbelief and said, "What happened?" And he said, "You should know, you're the one who dropped the razor."
Story time. One of my rudest clients. So you all know when I was taking clients, I was a home-based nail tech, meaning I was working from my house. And to be more specific, during this time, I was working on my porch. When I first started receiving clients, I was charging about $15 to $20 per set. And I also didn't have all the materials I have today because I couldn't afford it. When it came to nail products, I always had high-end products and products I know that wouldn't harm my clients' nails. When it came to lotion or cuticle oil, I would usually make it at home or buy it at the dollar store. Now this one client, I was doing her nails, everything was going great. But as soon as I pull out the lotion and the cuticle oil, my client was like, "Oh my god, is that from the dollar store?" And I'm like, yes, girl, it is. It smells good and it works fine. And then she started recording me trying to expose me, saying that I'm cheap. And it made me feel some type of way, so I clipped her nails off and never received her again. Story time. My client stole from me. When I was taking clients, I had a policy where they're allowed to bring one guest with them. So that's what my client did. And they also had big bags on them, but I didn't really think much of it. And she only came for a soak off. And since I was working at home at the time, I didn't have a sink in my room. So I had to go out to my kitchen to get hot water so the soak off is quicker. And I'm assuming at that time, that's when they grabbed a handful of my materials and just put it in their bag. And I didn't notice until the next day since she was my last client and it was just a soak off. When I went to go message her, I noticed that she created a nail page saying she's taking clients. And her first post was all the material she has, and they were all mine. And I could even call the cops because I was working from home and there's no evidence. So after that, I installed cameras everywhere.